On this episode, we break down the cost of staying on property versus off property. Today's September 27th, 2024, and this is episode 706 of the Main Street Magic Podcast.
Jeremy and Rhonda are more than a little fond of Disney World, so they made this podcast to share it all with you. Reports and resorts, top 10 lists of all sorts, Main Street Magic's bringing it home for you.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Main Street Magic. I am your host, Jeremy Stein, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely wife, Rhonda.
Hey guys! Make sure you check us out on the web at mainstmagic.com, as well as follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at mainstmagic, and on TikTok at MSM Podcast.
If you want to be part of the community and join the conversation, in addition to live streams from the parks and our weekly live show, head to Facebook and search for the Main Street Magic community and ask to join.
And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you can get brand new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.
Planning a trip to Disneyland or Walt Disney World can be overwhelming and at times just downright frustrating. But don't worry, because Mouse Dining removes the frustration of booking Disney dining reservations, alerting you when they spot availability for your desired restaurant, date, meal, and time. Visit msmfriends.com to use this free service. Ready for your next bucket list trip? Our trusted partner, MEI-Travel, will handle the planning so you can focus on the memories. They offer free vacation planning services and have nearly 20 years of experience creating memorable vacations. Visit mainstmagic.com/travel for a fee-free, no-obligation quote today.
So we're on day 3 of recording.
Oh yeah, we sure are.
This is Saturday. Happy Saturday.
Yeah, we're way ahead.
What are we doing today?
So this one, we're going to, if you go back to episode 698 and you listen to our cost of a vacation, which is our 2024 edition, we do it about every 2 years. That was the third time we did it. And we break down what it really costs based on value to go to all these different destinations in the U.S., how that compares to like Disney, Universal. So this one is going to hone in more on just Disney and staying on property and off property, right?
Okay.
That's one of the biggest questions we get.
Yes, it is.
So let's talk about first when you are going to Disney and you're deciding, do I want to stay on property? Do I want to stay off property? What are some of the factors that most people are looking at?
One is number one out of everything is your budget.
Yeah.
And how much you want and willing to spend. Next is how many people are in your family, your party, your, whatever you've got going on. And your time of year, depending on the season and if it's more or less on property or off property. And of course, your length of stay, like how long you're going to stay. If you're going to stay a night, a week, 2 weeks. And of course, your preference of where you want to be.
Yeah. And preference is some folks will just say we're staying on property. Like that's what we want. We want that theming. We want to stay on property.
Yeah.
If we go back to budget and you talk about that, obviously that can determine where you're staying.
Yeah.
But, that can determine whether you're staying at a value or a deluxe. That can determine whether you're on property or off. Whether you're getting a 2-bedroom suite or a studio.
Mm-hmm.
But just because, let's say, you have the money to stay on property at a deluxe in your budget, it still doesn't mean that's what you should do.
Correct.
You got to look at what is the value. It still comes down to how many people, what kind of things you prefer. So we're going to break some of those down, and we'll first go into kind of just an overview of each, right? So first, let's talk about staying on property. And when we say on property here, that really means the Disney-owned on property resorts.
Okay.
Not necessarily Spring, Swan and Dolphin. We can kind of talk about those a little bit extra. So your first real thing that you're going to look at, of course, is what does the room cost per night?
Right.
And what can you expect roughly for the cost per night at the Disney resorts?
Mm-hmm. And your value resorts can run anywhere from $160 to $240 per night. Your moderate resorts, $250 to $350 per night. Your deluxe resorts, $400 to $700 per night. And then your deluxe villas, $500 to $1,000 per night.
Yeah, and those deluxes, of course, are going to go plus. They're going to go above those top ones. But depending on, again, these are more on like a studio. But, that is obviously the first cost. Now, there are benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times depending on who you are, you might not look simply at an Excel spreadsheet that says a dollar amount as much as you also want to factor in value. Time is money. What type of benefits are there? What extra things are you getting for the extra amount of money you're spending? You don't want to just say, that's $1,000, that's $800. I'm going with 800. Right. And then the 800 doesn't have half the stuff that the 1,000 has, right? So what are some of the benefits that you can get by staying on Disney property?
One is an early park entry, and this is access to the parks 30 minutes before the official opening time. Free transportation. You have, depending on where you're staying on a Disney resort, you have buses, boat, monorail, and Skyline and you possibly, depending on where you're staying, you could have access to every single one. Free parking at Disney parks when you're staying on property. Extra magic hours, if available. Extended park hours on select days. And then, of course, your convenience, your proximity to the parks and the themed experiences.
Yeah. And those themed experiences, you have to look at putting a price on.
Oh, 100%.
Is this your first trip to Disney? Yeah. And would you rather your kids and your family and your party, be enthralled in that Disney bubble, knowing, you're going to spend more money, or are you okay giving that up just to save some money? And then you're going to have additional costs that we're not really factoring in, like food. I mean, food is an additional cost no matter where you're going.
Right.
If you're staying on property, you might be looking at higher food costs to go to the Disney restaurants and even the food courts compared to off property. When we break down some of the costs, it might make more sense to have a kitchen off property. And you can save some money there because you're not having to spend. And if you're off property, it could be cheaper dining because you can have easy access to like a McDonald's or something. You know what I mean? So you do have to, factor some of that in. Of course, you can always go vacationgrocerydeliveryfl.com.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can have, if you have a kitchen or even like a microwave or something in your room, you can
even
have them
if you don't
deliver.
and you want some snacks.
Oh yeah, it's perfect.
I mean,
for
it
snacks.
really is. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of the off-property resorts that we'll talk about will have included breakfast. Which you do not have on Disney property.
No.
So that can be a cost, but you can save a lot of money, like Rhonda's saying, by getting snacks. Get bagels and cream cheese or something for your room. You don't even need to go out for breakfast when you're doing stuff like that. So, all right, let's break down the staying off property. Let's talk first about that price per night, and we've tried to line these up with the value, moderate, and deluxe, and then villas of Disney. So, what are your average costs per night? Getting a room if you're off property.
Okay. We're going to call them budget hotels, and they can go as low as $60 to $100 per night. Mid-range, basically, hotels would be like $100 to $200 per night. You have more upscale hotels, which will be $200 to $400 plus per night. And then you can do vacation rental, like homes or whatever, for $100 to $300 plus per night. Of course, depending on your size and location.
Yeah, and if you're looking at Vrbo or Airbnb, which just works for some people.
Yes, it does.
Just look at the total costs. Those are one of those that's a very bait and switch, a lot like the off properties and some of their extra fees. You can look up something. It says it's near Disney. It's 5-bedroom, 4-bath. It's a house. It's got a pool, $150 a night. Then by the time you're done with your fees, your cleaning fees, your deposits, your everything, you'd be shocked at what the cost is. Sometimes it's still great.
Yeah.
But, and we're not going to include those in some of our figures just because, we're talking more about actual hotels and resorts. Now, what are some of the benefits at staying off property? You don't get maybe that theming or proximity to the parks, but there are some benefits for sure, right?
Yeah, there are. One major one would be potential savings. Generally, you can find cheaper rates for hotels and vacation rentals off property.
Yeah.
One is, you might have more dining options, access to a variety of dining options that might be less expensive than on property, or depending on in-room kitchens.
Yeah.
Your variety of choices, more flexible in terms of accommodation styles and locations.
Yep. Yeah. So, there's definitely some benefits to doing that. Now, when we talked about Disney property and additional costs. Wasn't a lot of bullet points, right?
Yeah,
We've got additional costs if you're staying off property.
we do.
You know, you've got either people know about these or they don't, but a lot of these will have resort fees.
Yes, they will.
You know, you can range from on those lower budget values to $10 to $25 per night.
Mm-hmm.
Those mid-levels, $25 to $40 a night. If you get into the real high-end off-property hotels, that per night resort fee could be $60 plus.
Mm-hmm.
And the resort fee is you paying for the things that the resort offers.
Right.
Their pool, their amenities, their restaurants, all of that.
Right.
You know, so again, that is an extra cost in their mind, but that's one of those that has always bothered me because you can't opt out of it. You can't just say, you know what, we really just want to lay our
Right.
head somewhere. We're not going to participate in the resort
Correct.
activities and amenities. Therefore, we don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
The same way you could say, I don't have a car. I don't need your parking. So you're not going to charge me for parking.
Right.
It's too bad you can't do that for
Correct.
resorts. Speaking of parking.
I just started to say,
Right?
yep, because of parking,
Yeah.
it does range.
Yes. And a majority of off-property will charge for parking.
Oh, yeah.
They are becoming few and far between that don't. Some of the hotels we will talk about are in the Flamingo Crossing area. I believe all of them are still offering free parking, but it's definitely something you got to think about because on that low end, again, you could have free, but you could go up to $15 a night. Those mid-rangers are going to be $15 to $25 a night. Get into the high-end ones, $25 to $40 a night.
Yeah.
Now, transportation. A lot of the off-property resorts do offer shuttles.
They do.
What's the problem with that?
The problem with that is you have got to get that paper and figure it out because sometimes they have certain times. Sometimes they, don't come as often. It can be very hard to plan around if you're going to take that in consideration
Yeah.
of using that transportation.
Yeah, and if you want to, like Rhonda said, there's only specific times that they will pick up, drop off, all of that. And if you want to rope drop, you're probably out of luck. If you want to, close out the night, close out the park, you're probably out of luck. And some of the places you have to reserve the actual shuttle service for your family.
Yep.
And so and also, a big one is time here. Because if they will actually drive to all four parks, which a lot won't unless they're really within close to the Disney bubble, then they will drop off at those park entrances basically, except for Magic Kingdom. They'll drop at TTC.
Right.
A lot of them can only go to TTC.
Right.
So if you want to go to Epcot and you go, oh, there is a shuttle. It's at the time I want. I reserved it. No deal. Let's hop on it. They drive you and drop you off at TTC. You then got to bus or monorail to Epcot or whatever you want to do. So again, just time is gonna take forever. You have to budget for transportation. So you have to look at budgeting not only for getting a rental car potentially if you don't have your own vehicle.
Right.
Maybe you decide you're going to use Uber to get to and from. You got to budget that in, right? If you do get a rental car, or you bring your own car, you have to pay to park at the Disney parks.
If you're not a pass holder.
Right. Yeah.
Which I know a lot of people that do come because they're coming for a long period of time or a week or whatever, or they do a couple of weeks through the year, they go ahead and purchase that annual pass.
Yes.
So good news is if you do have the annual pass, you won't have to. But if you don't and you just pay for the tickets.
Yeah. How much is that?
You
right?
do
How much is parking?
Yeah, you do.
At the parks per day?
Well, you're looking at a standard parking, a car, a motorcycle is $30 per day. And then preferred is anywhere from $45, $50 up to $55 per day.
Yeah.
If you want that closer and you don't want to.
And that fluctuates on season. So you're coming down at Christmas time, it's going to be at the 55 if you want that preferred close up parking. So, those are a lot of costs you have to factor in. And then of course, as we said, time and convenience.
Yep.
Time is money.
Yes, it is.
If it takes you 30 minutes to get from a Disney resort using their bus to a park in the morning, or it takes an hour and a half to get from an off property using a shuttle and then taking it to TTC and transferring and all of that, think about how much money you spent on your park tickets and now you're not getting to even utilize the time and value in that ticket. So it's definitely something you have to think about.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's break down a couple of costs. We're going to start with a Disney resort and looking ahead to January of 2025. Let's just say you decided you're going to go for 6 nights. You're going to go January 19th. You're going to check out on January 25th.
Sounds nice.
It does sound very nice. I would love to do that. On the low end value all-star movies for a preferred room, your room for that entire week would be $1,086 total, which breaks down to $181 per night.
Okay.
That's all you have to worry about for the room. You're done, right?
Right.
Now, let's just say you decided to stay off property. Okay. If you bring your own car, awesome. You really don't have to worry about, additional costs there. If you decide you're going to rent a car, you could be looking at for that week for a midsize like a Corolla about $650 for the whole week. You then have to pay to park when you go to the parks. So if you're doing that every day at $30 a day, that's another $180. So that added transportation cost for that week is $830.
Unless you're pass holder, and then you can just knock that.
Sure, go ahead and knock off that $180. We're going to do it if you're not a pass holder.
Okay.
If you decide you don't want to rent a car, you're cool taking Uber, you want to factor in, on average, and it is a little bit probably of the lower end, $15 each way from your resort to a park. And then, of course, $15 home would be just $30 a day. Will average $180 for the week.
Yeah,
okay?
so that I would say between
that could be from $150 to $300.
Yeah, depending on like the surcharges, how they say we're at night or whatever.
Yeah, especially if you're closing down a park or your first thing in the morning.
Also picture people and writing this stuff down. So then if they're pass holder, scratch that off. I'm excited. I'm saving $180. So anyways, that's why I'm like, but you can save that.
Well, and if you want these notes and a breakdown of these costs as we're looking at them, you can go out to our website, mainstmagic.com. You'll see an area where you can enter your email address and subscribe to our email newsletter. And every Monday, we send out an email that it kind of tells you the episodes from the past week. And then if there's notes or something worthy or bonus material, we include that in there. Let you know what's coming, if there's deals, specials going on, all that good stuff. So go to the website and go ahead and sign up. So let's start with an off-property resort. We're going to go with the Fairfield Inn at Flamingo Crossing.
Okay.
We're actually staying there, last night when this comes out.
Oh, my goodness.
Because we're so far ahead, but we are going to be staying there for the night of Mickey's Not So Scary. And it's a wonderful resort. Flamingo Crossing is an awesome area.
And it's growing.
Growing like crazy. We love it over there.
It is only, I think, and I might be exaggerating just a tiny, and Jeremy could tell me, I believe it is only a mile after you leave the sign.
Yeah, I believe so, off Western Way.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's about 1 mile. It is.
Because you leave the sign, and I feel like another mile or two, and we're literally at our hotel.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Bonnet Creek area, that is truly we're on Disney property, you know, but this is as close as you're going to get as far as a complex area goes. And there's a bunch of Disney College program students back there and stuff. So it makes sense. But this place is wonderful. There's half a dozen hotels, restaurants, shopping with the Target. It's
if you
amazing.
Forgot something.
Yeah. More and more is coming.
Yeah.
So it really is great over there. And all those can be booked by our, preferred travel partner with MEI-Travel.
100%.
So anything we're talking about can be booked through them.
Yeah.
So don't forget that. So that room is going to cost you $865 for the week. That breaks down to $141 per night. If you did bring your own car, I did factor in if you want, you have to pay for that Disney parking. That's now $171 per night. Now, what's great about the Flamingo Crossing hotels, as we kind of mentioned earlier, there is no resort fees.
Correct.
And there are no parking fees.
Correct.
So that right there is a huge bonus when you're factoring in if you're going to do an off-property, what area are you looking at? Another great thing that you will find with a lot of off-properties, especially here at Flamingo Crossing, is that they will offer breakfast.
Yes.
The closer you are to Disney property, the more chances they're even going to include Mickey waffles, right?
Yes.
So
super awesome.
that could certainly factor into your cost. If you are the type to go down and you're buying 4 breakfasts every morning at the food court at All-Star Movies, you can factor in about another $1 per day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're the type that's going to use vacation grocery delivery, or you just don't eat breakfast like we tend not to do, you can kind of work around that, but know that it is included there. Now, if you did have to rent a car for the Fairfield Inn, we're adding those extra costs of not only the rental car, but parking at the parks. You're at $16.95 for the week. That breaks down to $282 per night.
Which is honestly still not bad.
It's not bad at all. Going up a bit, right? And at $282 a night, you're $100 more a night than you were at the All-Star Movies, right? But you don't get the theming. You don't get some of the added benefits there. If you decided to forego the rental car, you went with Uber, that breaks out to $1,045 for the week, $174 per night. So that could certainly be a huge cost savings if Uber works for your family. That can be difficult for families coming to Disney because of the need for car seats. So you could always up those costs or, you know, have to do a rental car or something.
Right.
Let's give another example, but we're going to go on property, not Disney owned, with just say the Wyndham Garden.
Right, which is right there at Disney Springs.
Yeah.
It is the closest that you can walk to Disney Springs.
Yeah.
Especially depending on what room in the garden. I feel like you're almost sleeping at the Springs.
It
I
really
feel
does
like,
feel that way. It is.
yeah,
It is at the entrance there.
Yep.
So you know, a lot of times, if you want a resort hop, this is really cool because you can walk down there and take the buses to the resorts and then make your way back to Springs. We've done that a lot when we've stayed at the Disney Springs hotels. These are this portion of the Wyndham Lake Buena Vista. There is the tower.
Yes.
This is the garden, which is a
Correct.
motel exterior entry
is.
setup. So it is very
they're
comparable
older.
to the values. They're a little
Yes.
bit older.
Yes.
And they do have full beds in
Yes.
here. So for 2 full beds, all in for the room would be $732 for the week, which is only $122 per night.
Which is really
Very,
good.
very good. But you have to pay the resort fee.
Yes.
For your week, that resort fee add-on would be $243 total. Now that's bringing your room for the week to $975, which is $162 per night, right? That's still really, really good. Only $20 cheaper than if you were staying at All-Star Movies. Okay?
There's still a but.
There's still a but. Let's just say that you brought your car. Well, now you got to pay parking. That's another $150 for the week there. That brings your total to $1,125, including that resort fee. You're now at $187 per night. That's your same price as staying at All-Star Movies already. Okay? If you did not bring your own car and you decided to rent a vehicle, let's throw all those costs together. That's going to bring you to almost $2,000 for the week, $355 a night. Now you're really getting up there. And if you decided not to do a rental, you didn't bring your own car, but you want to Uber to the parks, you don't want to worry with their shuttle service and all, and you can't walk to Disney Springs and get a bus to the parks.
No.
Only to other resorts.
Only other resorts.
Right? So with your Uber, your total for the week would be $1,155, which would break down to $192 per night. So look at your savings, look at your size, look at what you want. Do you want the theming? You know, do you want the convenience? I think on a value level, it's a no-brainer to stay on property.
I'll agree with that.
I mean, we just proved it.
Yes.
Now you can factor in costs, you know, of if you have a kitchen, if you know, whatever that may be for food, but room alone, it makes sense to stay on Disney property completely.
Yeah.
Now, if you have that larger family and you need larger space, this is where you really want to break down some numbers.
Yeah.
So let's take that same week in January, the 19th to the 25th, and let's go on the low end of a deluxe over at Disney at Old Key West.
Okay.
And you need a 2-bedroom.
Yes.
You know, that's the size your family is, right? Yeah. That is going to run you $5,763 for the week. That comes into $960 per night. Now you're all in on your room, but it's at $960 per night. We're going to go with the same rental car, $650 for the week, $180 for parking. We'll say the same average if you chose Uber at $180. and we're going to look at the Town Place Suites over there at Flamingo Crossing.
Mm-hmm.
They have a 2-bedroom. You remember we've stayed at that one
Yes,
before.
we have.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You got a living room. You have 2-bedroom.
One bathroom.
One bathroom. You have a full kitchen, oven, stovetop. It really is a wonderful, wonderful space, and you're right there at Flamingo Crossing.
And the 2-bedroom at Old Key West will have 2 bathrooms.
Yes, it will.
Though.
Yes, it will.
So
again, we're
Something to note.
comparing size. We're not comparing. Yeah, we're comparing size. Almost not like, because the difference between being in a 2-bedroom in Old Key West and a 2-bedroom in Town Place Suites is astronomical.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge difference, right?
100%.
So including things like that extra bathroom, but just everything else about it. But if you chose the Town Place Suites, $1,842 for the week at $307 a night, right? So almost a third of the cost. Okay. No resort, no parking fee. Your breakfast is included, or you can cook in your kitchen, use Vacation Grocery Delivery.
Oh, that's
they will
where I
deliver
would
over
definitely.
there. 100%. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Now, if you did decide to get a rental car, that's going to bring your grand total to $2,875, which is $475 per night. Still almost half of staying on Disney property.
Yeah.
And then with Uber, if you chose that, you're a little over $2,000 per night. So coming down to about $337 per night.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is where I'm going to just say, because all this will kind of make my brain hurt, but this is where just use our travel advisor, because there's things like you can still go back to one of the values, and there is a family suite, air quote unquote.
Yep.
And then
or at Art of Animation.
You
with the
can go
family
to Art of
suites.
Animation,
Yeah.
or you can literally have 2 rooms, and sometimes they can be adjoining.
Yes.
So, there's a lot that you can look at, and our wonderful travel advisors would completely break this down for you and do this too.
Yeah. And that's where we like to give this baseline. You know what I mean? To give you some info to take that when you do go to MEI-Travel,
yes.
You're able to even say all right, well, we really decided we do want to stay on property, and, and then they can break down all of that for you. And also, to be fair to Disney, these prices that we gave were all rack rates.
Right.
These were not doing a package. This is not if you're an annual pass holder, if you're a Florida resident, if it's fall or winter or summer or whatever it may be, you can still save a ton there. So, again, we want to do these to kind of give you the tools for your toolbox.
Yeah.
And if you are ready for that next trip, of course, no matter where you want to go, our trusted partner, MEI-Travel, will handle the planning so you can focus on the memories. They offer free vacation planning services and have nearly 20 years of experience creating memorable vacations. Visit mainstmagic.com/travel for a fee-free, no-obligation quote today. If you want everything that's coming up, then you want to go ahead and hit the subscribe button. You get brand new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. And of course, Rhonda and I would be super thankful if you could please leave us a rating and review,
because it helps our show grow.
That's all we've got. We'll see you real soon.
Jeremy and Rhonda are more than a little fond of Disney World, so they made this podcast to share it all with you. Reports and resorts, top 10 lists of all sorts. Main Street Magic's bringing it home.